I think there are very fascinating qualities that water has. What it does is that it's the iconic resource that in fact connects us all while it isolates us. And I want to talk about both sides of that because, as you can imagine, we can all imagine what a river looks like, right? A river flows, and so it is passing many, many communities on the way. If you think of some iconic rivers, such as, say, that arise in the Himalayas, there's thousands of miles that these rivers are going across. So there are hundreds of thousands of people who engage with that water as it flows by them. So water is a fascinating resource because it is really an iconic resource that connects and yet isolates in very very tragic ways in some way. Water collection is an iconic thing also. I think one of the things that had drawn me that I always think about is something that really motivated my sort of field work. And it's this idea where, so this is situated in rural Sindh in current day Pakistan. It's the temperatures are very, very high. They can range between 40 and 50 degrees Celsius. So this is a hot part of the world. And rural women, obviously, as you can imagine, have no access to piped water. They have nothing, coming into their homes directly. So what women have to do is that's where women sort of walk long distances to whatever the well or the watering hole is to sort of collect water and bring it back for the day's supply or the day and a half supply that the family, some of the farm animals will use. So what's interesting about women and sort of water access in rural areas is that a lot of young girls also get to do this work. Like they're the ones in their families who have to do this work. But what's fascinating is that while they are going and moving from their homes and doing this work, that's also a time of coming together. That's also a time of connecting with your friends, your other people in the community who all happen to also be women. So it's a time to maybe talk, to unburden, to share things that happened the previous day, because you're out of your household in that chore that you're running. So it's backbreaking work, and none of us should at all try and romanticize it that, for a little while, women are like free of their burdens and they can relax and they can do this. So there are both sides to it. And I think that's why thinking about water as both connecting and isolating is very helpful. But this story of how women go and collect water, where they come together with, other women, other girls, and then yet it's so water is very, very heavy. So when you always see those pictures of women sort of carrying big water sort of pots on their heads, I mean, try and carry a few books or something on your head and see how you feel, right? It's not easy carrying heavy water pots without spilling them or without spilling anything but water more so. So it's really hard work, but it falls to women. And what it's doing is that it is sort of, in a way, placing them in their traditional roles, right? And it's saying like the men or the young boys are never sent out to gather water. So this is also a marker of social status. And that marker of social status, this kind of chore work is always pushed onto women, like you have to take care of it. So again, in rural settings, one of the things that women do is that they take care of the animals. So this could be if you have a cow, if you have a buffalo, you're sort of better off, but your sheep, your goats, all of that care of animals also falls to women. And again, they work and they have to take care of the food, the fodder, the water that these animals have. So it is that women are very much present in the field. They do the work. They have very good information of how resources should be managed. But when you come to how water is governed, right now, you're going at these big systemic levels where a decision's made. So let's connect with one thing that the World Bank has done. The World Bank over the last several decades wanted something called farmer managed irrigation and farmer sort of managed irrigation water. So the idea was turn these big irrigation systems over to the farmers. But what they did is, interestingly, is that they just went and looked at these rural hierarchies and they made these farmer groups and other sort of water user associations, and there's sort of different sort of levels of how this all works. But when that happened, all of the representatives of those farmer groups and those water user associations were basically men. So they were men farmers, and there was no representation of women in those in those management units. So it's, to me, it's obviously it's very tragic, and as it should be to all of us, right? So there was not even a sense that there should be a token representation of women. So imagine that you're the user of a resource, you have to manage it for your family, and yet you are left out of any decision making about that resource. So for the most part, that I think is a huge way of isolating. That is cutting us off from any say about how we use a resource. That's one way that I think of isolation, where women are disconnected and held that way, held in where you do the work, but you have no say in the decision making. So I think that's really, I mean, it really, I guess it's not confounding, but it's very angering in some way. It's very frustrating as to why is that the case, and why through, to sort of like pull this together, why through the use of water, which again is so connective and on which everybody obviously relies, why don't we actually bring them in and say, look, could be the exemplary connective resource. Women could manage this better, have a say in how it's done, and by that they could actually, I think, gain a lot more social status and hopefully a say in how other decisions are also made. My sort of hope is, and my vision is, that we can change this. We can bring the women from the fields into the decision making spaces, into the conference rooms. And I remember while I was doing my field work, there used to be conference rooms with sort of 16 people, and I would be the only female in them. And I remember that at the time while I was making my, sort of like noting everything as, someone getting their doctorate, I had the brightest pink laptop cover. And that would be the only brightness in a very dull gray, black, white sort of room full of men, where I was the only female representation. So my hope is that someday, especially because when you contrast it and you go out into the field and you see all of the women in the fields doing the work, there are bright popping colors, okay? There is bright yellow, there is parrot green, there is pinks and reds and oranges. It's a cornucopia of just how they see themselves. So my hope is that if we are successful, we can actually bring those women, the actual real workers, into those conference rooms, into those decision-making spaces. It will transform the decisions that are made. It will change the culture of these spaces. So women really can be brought in and included, and I want to see that. I want to see a world where I can walk into a room and at least half of it, and now I'm talking about like boring irrigation water work, okay, that I can see women there in all of their actual sort of glory and their realness, and that they are engaging and saying, no, we can make these decisions, and we are going to make these decisions, and we're going to look the way that we look. So I want all of that vibrancy to come into that policy making space, and I think the decisions we get will change.